Chapter 7. Henry.
"Good morning, Mrs. Baxter, Miss Lockwood,"
Henry said, as the two women entered his shop.
"Good morning, Mr. Brown,"
Mrs. Baxter replied.
"Would it be all right with you if we were both gone from the store for a few hours today? I need to check in on the women who requested dresses while I was gone, but I'd like for Mary to come with me."
"I think I can manage that."
He turned to look at Miss Lockwood.
"It will be nice for you to meet some of the other women in town."
A soft pink covered her cheeks, and he noticed that she didn't quite meet his gaze.
"Yes, I suppose it will. Come, Mary, let's grab some fabric to take with us,"
Mrs. Baxter said, and the two women headed upstairs. Henry watched them for a minute, wondering if there was some way to get the women who wanted dresses to purchase more items from him as well. The bell above the door jingled, but before Henry could turn to see who it was, the breathless voice of Willie Johnson met his ears.
"Mr. Brown! Mr. Brown!"
Willie stood panting and trying to catch his breath. He was a good kid, but he was easily excitable. He came into the store at least twice a week with some news he couldn't wait to share. Of course, that usually consisted of some boy putting a lizard on a girl during school, or some farmer's cow getting out and wandering the streets. But to Willie, it was always front-page news.
"What is it, Willie?"
"The new building, sir."
Willie placed his hands on his knees and bent over to catch his breath.
"Yes, what about it?"
Construction had started on a new building about a week ago, and it appeared as if completion was nearing.
"It's going to be another store."
Willie took a few more large gulps of air and then peered up at Mr. Brown.
"What?"
Shock and anger resonated through Henry.
"It can't be another shop. I barely get enough business to stay open as it is."
The boy nodded and took another few breaths.
"I heard the man say he was opening here because of the coming railroad. He thinks there will be enough business for both of you when that happens."
Henry shook his head.
"That might be true, but the railroad isn't even here yet. Even if we do get it, it will take months before it's coming through our town. What am I supposed to do until then?"
The boy shook his head.
"I don't know, but I heard the other guy is a friend of Mr. Thompson at the bank and got a loan from him. Maybe you could get money from him, too."
A feeling of anger coursed through Henry. Harold must have known about this when Henry came to ask for a loan, but he'd said nothing. That was rather surprising, as Henry would have expected his former friend to want to see his face when he found out the news. However, this did explain why he hadn't seemed worried about Henry's store closing. He knew another was about to open, and it would be run by a friend of his. Henry wondered if Harold was getting a discount as well, or if all of this just came back to Maggie.
"Thank you, Willie, for letting me know."
"You're welcome, sir."
He paused and rocked back and forth on his feet for a minute.
"Do you think I could get a penny candy for the information, sir?"
Normally, Henry would say no. Money was already tight, and he certainly wasn't going to stay in business if he gave out his wares. But Willie was from a very poor family who was never able to afford penny candy, and he was such a good boy.
"You may choose one, Willie, but it must remain our secret. I can't have all the kids running in here sharing news in hopes of getting one."
Willie's eyes were wide and serious as he shook his head.
"I won't tell a soul, Mr. Brown. Thank you."
He took only a moment to scan the offerings before selecting the one he wanted and bolting out of the store again. Henry sighed and leaned back on his stool. Another store? What was he going to do? Harold had already denied his loan, and while he could try another town, they wouldn't know him and therefore would be unlikely to offer him a loan. The stairs creaked, and he looked up to see Miss Lockwood descending. Though Mrs. Baxter hadn't said much about her background, he could tell she'd had a hard life. Her dark hair contained quite a few bits of gray, and there were lines deeply etched in her face, caverns that he knew held secrets. Still, he thought she was pretty, and he could tell she'd been beautiful in her youth.
Did you need something, Miss Lockwood?
Yes, a glass of water if possible.
Henry nodded and motioned toward the back of the store.
There's a pump out back and a cup near it. You can use it, but be sure to wash it after.
Yes, sir, I will.
She turned to exit and then paused.
Is everything okay, Mr. Brown? I couldn't help but overhear the boy.
Henry sighed and ran his hand across his chin, the sound of his whiskers scratching in the silence.
Unfortunately not. The new building coming in is another store, and I don't know how I'm supposed to compete with them.
Miss Lockwood pressed her lips together as if deciding if she should speak, and when she finally did, her voice was soft and low.
You could look at adding catalog orders to your store.
Catalog orders?
His hand fell from his chin and he focused completely on her.
What do you mean?
In Chicago, there are catalogs where people can shop for things not usually found in stores. The orders are placed through the store and then delivered through rail and coach. I believe the store owners get a percentage of the sale.
Henry tilted his head.
A percentage of the sale? And I don't have to keep anything in stock that might not sell?
She shook her head.
I don't believe so, sir, but I'll admit I don't know much else about it. I could never afford to place an order, but I did enjoy looking through the catalog.
A wistful smile crossed her features, and then she was gone. A catalog. It wasn't the worst idea. As long as the catalog didn't cost him anything, the sales would be money he could get for little effort. It wasn't a long-term solution, but maybe it would hold him over until the railroad came, or until the other store went out of business. He'd have to find out who this other owner was. Maybe there was something in his past that would prevent him from opening a store. It wasn't an avenue he wanted to pursue, but at this point he needed to keep all his options open.
Miss Lockwood,
he asked when she returned with a cup of water,
do you know how I would go about finding such a catalog?
A soft pink bloomed across her cheeks.
I have one at Elizabeth's place. I'm not sure why I brought it with me, but I could bring it tomorrow. I think there's a way to contact the company on the back.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
She issued a quick nod and then scurried up the stairs. If this catalog idea worked out, he'd have to find a way to thank her.